Okay, I want to bring in the one and only Michael Avenatti. You know him, Stormy Daniels' attorney. He joins us on the phone. All right, Michael, you took to Twitter and you were talking about Cohen and his attorney, Lanny Davis, saying, quote, Mr. Davis, Lanny Davis, Mr. Davis is a good lawyer, but his client, Mr. Cohen, is not innocent, nor is he a victim. He is a co-conspirator, dishonest thug who continues to refuse to come clean and do the right thing. They are playing you and aiming for a pardon. Where is the rest of the evidence and tapes? Now, Davis says Cohen is not seeking a pardon, and you don't buy that. So, Michael, I got to walk through a few things. A, give you credit, because you said there's not one tape, there's tapes. You were right. But a week ago, didn't you go out to dinner with Michael Cohen? They had said you ran into him in a restaurant. And I have to tell you, we got 14,000 restaurants in New York City, so I personally don't buy that you just ran into one another. And I think you said that you could actually see yourself working with Cohen at some point. So let's get through the noise and tell us what's really going on here.
Well, Stephanie, I happened to just by happenstance run into Michael Cohen at Scalinatella at 61st and 3rd. I decided at the last minute to go to that restaurant. I was with a friend of mine, and I walked into the restaurant. I was seated, and my friend said to me, "You're not going to believe who's here." And I looked up, and Mike. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Continue. So you ran into Michael Cohen.
No, I ran into Michael Cohen by happenstance. And, you know, Stephanie, but that was not the first communication that I had relating to us potentially sitting down with Michael Cohen and trying to resolve things. As I said on CNN last night, this has been in the works for a number of weeks, but it was contingent on Michael Cohen coming 100% clean and disclosing what he knew about the president and the president's culpability as it relates to potential criminal conduct. And on Sunday, we had a meeting actually set up on Monday, meeting 2 days ago, 4 p.m. in New York, and I canceled that meeting on Sunday because it became clear to me after speaking with Lanny Davis that morning that Michael was not prepared to do the right thing and wanted to basically have it both ways, and we're not going to participate in something like that. So my issue is as follows. Our issue is as follows. There's a number of other tapes. There's a lot of additional damaging information, and Michael Cohen doesn't want to provide that information to the American public and doesn't want to come clean. He is playing, and Lanny Davis is playing the American public right now. And we're not going to participate in that, and we're going to continue to hammer away at this guy until he does the right thing.
You think they're putting forth a front where they're saying, I'm trying to do the right thing, I'm releasing this tape to show that I'm a good guy, and that's not actually the truth? What do you mean they're playing us?
No, that's exactly what they're doing, Stephanie, because, again, this is one of many tapes. This is not even the tip of the iceberg. And look, if Lanny Davis is to be believed, his comments this morning that Michael Cohen is not seeking a pardon, Michael Cohen should issue a written statement this morning stating that he will not accept a pardon from Donald Trump, regardless of the circumstances.
Okay, he's not going to do that. No one would do that.
Why not? Why not?
Anyone who's facing prison time is not going to sign a document that says, I will not accept a pardon. There's no way he's going to. Would you do that? I wouldn't.
Stephanie, I absolutely would do that if I went on national television or I had my attorney go on national television and say that he was not seeking a pardon. I don't get it. If that's the truth, he should have no problem issuing that statement. And if he refuses to issue that statement, that should tell you something. Namely, that he's trying to have it both ways, which is exactly what they're doing right now. There's nothing stopping Michael Cohen and Lanny Davis from releasing the balance of the tapes. There's over a dozen. There's nothing stopping them from coming clean and doing the right thing. There just isn't.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.